Welcome back to another edition of Higher Education Today. I'm your host, Steven Roy Goodman. I'm here in Bloemfontein, South Africa, where we're going to be speaking about the intersection of theory and practice. And I've got with me the University of the Free State's Rector and Vice-Chancellor, Francis Petersen, who we're going to chat about this. Francis, welcome.
Oh, great to be here, Steven.
Well, thank you for having me. And maybe if we can start with this intersection. During the pandemic, I thought that you ran an incredible series that really covered some of that, which is why I thought it would be interesting to bring to a Higher Education Today audience some of your views about this intersection of theory and practice. And how does the university really do that in practice?
Yeah. So I believe, Stephen, that a question that universities around the globe has been grappling with was to say, well, how do we change? How do we make an impact on society through what we are as a university? So we do teaching and learning. We produce graduates, hopefully, that could add to the economy. And then we're also doing research and generating new knowledge. But if we only use that knowledge for ourselves and not making a change, then I think we could ask the question, why do universities exist in the first place? So that question of what is the role of university in society is for me a critical question. And in fact, there is where a lot of the discussions that happened during COVID is a very good example of that. There we say that besides the graduates that we produce as university to society, in the broadest sense, they should themselves make a difference to society. But also the research that we do, how can we improve the lives? And to be able to do that, you need to understand who is your society. So that relationship between the university and society, and try to make sure that the engagement sort of happens seamlessly. If you're going to create an institution that is seen to be elitist, then you create a gap. And then that communication, that conversation will never happen smoothly, and you will never learn to understand what society needs and what society wants. So at the University of the Free State, we try to, first of all, get to know our society. Try to work with our society in a co-creation of knowledge and a co-creation, hopefully, of the solution. So we don't go into a society and say, you need A, B, and C, we will provide. We listen, we hear, and then we engage. So for us, that ultimately is our mandate, to say that we generate knowledge, we educate, but we make sure that education and the knowledge that we generate impact the lives of people outside the university.
And let's assume that that's so. One of the things that always strikes me when I come to South Africa is how people have different perceptions of reality in South Africa, depending on where they sit. And so are universities really changing so many people's lives? I mean, I talk to so many people who say, well, the system is always the way it's always been. Unemployment is so high. Yeah, it's nice that this university and other universities do all these things, but really what I need is a job. And more important than anything else is I need a job. And a university can't promise that to everybody. So what are you doing? I'm assuming there's a career center, but is the career center an active place? Could it be more active? Are there things that you could focus on as vice-chancellor and other vice-chancellors that really are, let's say, more about getting a job rather than just the production of knowledge per se?
Yeah. So I want to separate getting a job and also creating your own job. So getting a job is not the function of the university alone, because obviously it depends on the health of the economy. If the economy is in a bad state, you're not going to have a lot of jobs available. And our role is to say, well, we should produce skills for the economy. So we need to have that conversation with the government as well, and with the private sector, industry and commerce, to say what is the rate at which you create jobs, and are we aligned so that we don't overproduce necessarily. Although the role of the university is not necessarily to produce vocational skilled people. You need also people that could think and could adjust and can innovate. So on the one side, we keep a close eye on the economy in our engagement with the government, private sector, industry and commerce as a component of society. We also try to say, well, what is needed in the economy and how they could generate new jobs. Secondly, for the student that will become the graduate, we also have a very strong focus on entrepreneurship to say, how do you create your own job? And this is where the career services also play a key role. In fact, we've got an entrepreneurial value chain that look at entrepreneurship as an exposure right in the beginning. It's like a foundation program in the first year to all of our first year students, whether they study humanities or social science, or whether they study health sciences. And then we've got structured programs which expose those components of entrepreneurship to the students that really are interested. And then part of our graduate attributes that we build in to our curriculum is around entrepreneurship as well. So to what extent do we prepare graduates to go out and to establish jobs, and not only for themselves, but obviously for the society as well. And then the third thing is our students as well as our staff. To what extent do they work with communities where jobs aren't readily available, but to see whether you can, through research and knowledge generation, develop sustainable livelihoods. A very good example, and this is actually quite a good example now, is that the whole focus in the developing world, in also the developed world, is about just energy transition. At the University of the Free State, we've got a very strong agriculture faculty. They have got a lot of experience in cactus. We link up with another university with a very strong focus on process engineering. And what we do is through a series of process unit operations, which are well known. It's not new technologies. The new focus innovation is how to integrate that. You can produce biodiesel and synthetic fuel with zero, with zero emissions as such. So the one component of producing the cactus is also to produce jobs for those in the community that hasn't got jobs. But the whole process add to the issue of climate change and emissions, and therefore it also take jobs that might disappear in the future into account. So those are the sort of the interrelationships. But we look at the economy, we look at entrepreneurship, and then we look at, through our knowledge and our research, to what extent we can provide new sustainable livelihood options for those in the community that hasn't got jobs.
Well, that's very interesting, because the focus on entrepreneurship, as you well know, is a major issue around the world, because it's not necessarily something that's taught. Some of it's inherent, and some of it's just a way of thinking. And it's not so easy to take some people who've never thought in an entrepreneurial way and encourage them to do so, especially in certain societies around the world where that just has not traditionally been the case. So I guess what I'm interested in is how do you do that exactly? And I love South Africa, so I don't mean this in an inappropriate way in any shape or form, but I tend to meet a lot of people in South Africa when I travel through South Africa whose initial thought is not necessarily entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
And what you're saying rings very true to me, which is, yes, it's important to bring those entrepreneurial thoughts, but how do you do that in a way that's not hitting somebody over the head and say, you really should think about it this way?
Yeah.
How do you bring someone along to think more entrepreneurial?
Yeah. So, and that's the reason why I referred to earlier about the ecosystem. And so when students enter the university, and we're taking about 8,000 first year fresh students into the university, we got a foundation module that expose all of the 8,000 students to the concept of entrepreneurship, what to focus on. Now, if only 10% of the 8,000 are interested. And that probably would be the case, because you not everybody is going to be an entrepreneur. Even doesn't matter what teaching and what influence you try to exert on that. So even if 10% of that 8,000 students are interested, we then have a structured program of courses that we expose them to. We have got an incubator on campus that let them experiment. We bring in entrepreneurs that were successful and those that failed, so that they also understand it's not always about getting things right the first time. You also learn. And then we pull that through what we call innovation, where you can have processes which you work with companies to spin out the process, either in a spin out company or you license the process to a company. So that's the value chain. But we probably only take almost about less than 8% of your total number that will go right through. But for me, the wonderful part is that initial exposure is also then pick up formally in your courses through graduate attributes. So entrepreneurship is not always about creating a job. It's also about how do you innovate in an existing job. So those that find an existing job or an established job, they would be able to adapt, they will be able to innovate, and they hopefully will be able to think differently. And that is the way in which we bring across these concepts. Now, I never said that is easy, because in a ecosystem which is supposed to support entrepreneurs, you have to create also the environment for entrepreneurs to flourish. So if you register a business, what is the number of red tape that you have to go through? If you have to sell a product and the person that got the product only pay you 5 months later, all of these little things feed into the ecosystem of entrepreneurship. And therefore, what we also do is to talk to the external environment, not only the student that could become an entrepreneur, but also the external environment. So they all have to fall into place. Now in South Africa, because you was referring to earlier to South Africa, in South Africa, one of our unfortunate challenges that we've got is the fact that the ecosystem for support for entrepreneurs in South Africa has failed. And we need to revive that in a way. All of the things that I talked about earlier, how do you support that? That's not there at the level where it should be. And we need to fix that. And I think you would be amazed. You probably would have heard that South Africans are very resilient. They're also very original thinkers. But you need to be able to support them. And I'm pretty sure you will get more entrepreneurs coming out of the system.
And let's say we were having this conversation with some of your colleagues who were vice-chancellors of other universities. What are you as a community doing to help to create that ecosystem to do that? Is there something that you're doing or some of your colleagues together are doing? Some sort of initiatives that you might be doing?
Yeah. So we've got a entity called Universities South Africa. In short, it's USAF. And I'm happy to be the deputy chair of USAF. We've got 26 public universities, so all the vice-chancellors, the 26 vice-chancellors, belongs to this entity. And there we talk about things that are common in the sector. How do we build a stronger sector? How do we look at student funding? And a whole series of various issues. Now, one that we have developed is an entrepreneurship program under the auspices of USAF, who are supporting these institutions. We also, at some institutions, because they aren't all at the same level of development in terms of entrepreneurship, has developed technology transfer offices that transfer technologies to the industry. It's a well-designed system. And I must say, my fellow vice-chancellors, most of them are very enthusiastic about this initiative, and the students themselves are also very enthusiastic. That we need to build up a little bit further. But again, our part of this group is to, or part of this initiative is to get external funding outside of South Africa to help it. And there are various other governments from around the globe that support that. But then we also interface with the government to be able to say, well, these challenges that I referred to earlier, how can we address that so that as we develop these entrepreneurs, that they aren't negatively impacting year 2 or year 3 when they start to get to run their own businesses. So there is I wouldn't say a uniform, but a collective approach towards entrepreneurship within the higher education sector in South Africa.
When speaking of that, how do you deal with international students who want to come to this university and the rest of South Africa? As you probably know, in the United States, we tend to attract a lot of international students who come to the U.S. But what about international students who come here?
Yeah, so we got about 42,000 students in total, and about 5% of those students are international. But you then got a very research-intensive university like the University of Cape Town. About 24% of their students are international. So it varies, and I would like to say that the universities are open in South Africa, are open for international students. We have different approaches. We do have semester abroad studies that people could come. We also have occasional students that comes to work on certain projects. We see that a large proportion of our international students are actually postgraduate students. They're doing masters and doctoral studies. We do attract, from University of the Free State perspective, we do attract, most of our international students are actually from the continent. And we do attract a few students from the States and other parts of Europe and also the UK. But that's an area that we would like to expand. And it's important, therefore, that that the issue such as what do we present to your international student that are different. So when we talk about social justice in the context of the global south or in South Africa, when we're talking about the issue that is currently very topical, decolonization, and very importantly, Steve, the whole change in the way post-COVID, how do we look at internationalization? How do we offer joint modules together? So with the university in the States and University of the Free State, maybe we can co-teach on a module. So you start to not only looking at the physical mobility of students, say to the University of the Free State or to a university in South Africa, but you expand that mobility so that it also becomes virtual. So we do have programs that obviously welcome the students. We do have programs that support the students, and we do work very closely with the different embassies so that they also can support the students where necessary.
That is very interesting, because one of the students I met here is, if I remember this correctly, she's from Durban, but she's only here for a few weeks, and then she's doing the rest of her modules back home. So that gives her the flexibility to do that, but she happens to be from Durban, but she could just as well be from another country and do that.
Yeah. So post-COVID, the whole issue of a virtual engagement has obviously come to the fore very pertinently, and our teaching and learning strategy is in fact a blended strategy. So it varies from face-to-face, but also to complete online, and in between we've got virtual reality, we've got flipped classrooms, emergency teaching and learning, open and distance learning, up until say complete online, and the idea is that the strategy is designed in such a way that you can interchange between them. But ultimately, we're still a residential university, so it is to say, how can you strengthen the residential component or the face-to-face component? And therefore, if you sit in the UK or you sit in the States, there are modules that you can do online. You wouldn't be able to do the whole program online, but there are certain modules, because we still want people to experience the university, to experience the environment. And if you really want to learn about a different country, a different culture, just a different geography, you have to spend some time here. And that's the reason why we blend it as part of our teaching and learning strategy.
Well, and that's why we're here to cover this exact reason. But one of the things I wanted to pivot to, if we could, are the costs. So, a lot of people in the United States and elsewhere complain that universities are too expensive and that students don't have enough money to pay for the tuition. And then sometimes if they don't pay their certain bills, they can't register for classes. And I hear this complaint all the time from a lot of students. What do you say to a student who says, well, I would like to come, my funding just isn't there? What do you say to that student?
Yeah. So in South Africa, and in fact, post 2016, it was implemented in 2018, we have a system of free higher education for the poor and the working class. And what it actually means in terms of South African rand, if you come from a household that earns up to 350,000, you can study for free, but you must be academically eligible. And that system means that you bring a lot of students, you provide a lot of students access. So if a student come with a question that you just articulated, he or she would be able to come to the University of the Free State or to any other university if he or she meets the academic requirements and there are space available, then that person could study. The student then will be supported by the state. At the moment, it's full cost. So it's for the tuition, it's for the accommodation, it's for meal allowance, it's for book allowance. So it's really the full cost. And then because we attract quite a large number of students into the University of the Free State from previously disadvantaged communities. So we also have a No Hungry student program where we intervene if students haven't got enough money for food and so on. So from a funding perspective, Steve, a lot of previously excluded students due to financial challenges are now entering the higher education system in South Africa due to the fact that we have got free higher education.
Well, I don't mean to pick on you as a South African, but because with the segment that we did, the series of segments we did just before we came to South Africa, we did some in Ohio. And they have a food pantry on campus for students in Ohio who can't afford food even though they're students.
Yeah.
So this is a universal issue. And the thing I asked in Ohio that I think I'd like to ask you as well is, what about the student who's not so poor, but the student who has over a certain income threshold and maybe they don't get the whole subsidy, and then they still don't have enough funds to either register for classes, have enough food to eat? Is South Africa different from Ohio or vice versa?
No, that group is actually defined. We call it in South Africa the missing middle group. So they are above that threshold, but their families aren't rich enough or wealthy enough to be able to give them the things that we would expect a student to receive at university. So we do have a food bank. We've got a very strong agriculture faculty, as I said earlier. We also produce own vegetables and so on, and we then also process that into food products through our food processing units at the university. In relation to that, you have to be very, very wide awake how do you manage it, because it's also a stigma. So they won't take it up even if they are hungry or even if they want to use it. So we've got specific programs that we work with psychologists to be able to ensure that we bring the students in without they feeling they've been stigmatized. But the missing middle, to come to that particular group, there we assist as a university. We see how many bursaries we can make available, how many support we can provide. And then we have got an aggressive campaign, more than a campaign, actually aggressive engagement with exactly the sectors that we need to serve, the private sector, industry, commerce, and government, to say that these are the students that need support. And you can say that because, and you can actually ask them, because you got a relationship with them, with those sectors. And we often find that a large percentage of the bursaries that we make available come from those sectors to support that. And that's a sector that unfortunately is growing at the moment, because a lot of focus is focusing on the 350 threshold and lower. And we as university have worked very hard to get enough funding to supplement our own funding to make sure that we assist those students where the needs are.
And we only have a minute or so left, but is there something that I didn't ask you that you would like to share with the U.S. audience who may not be familiar with the University of the Free State?
Yeah. So the University of the Free State is in the center of South Africa. We're mainly impacting the sort of the agriculture sector, and we've got quite a lot of expertise in there. But a lot of our engagement as a university has been on the social justice part. So what is right? And therefore, the graduates that we produce are graduates that are socially responsive, and they have got a pretty good understanding of what social justice means in the world in which they operate. And our students, and hopefully as with many other universities, are global citizens. They are students that will become graduates that will be globally mobile through the globalization and interconnectivity. And for me, it is important that entities, institutions in the States and other part of the globe learn not only to touch sides with our graduates, but also come and spend some time at the university to experience firsthand how social justice are integrated in our pedagogy of teaching, in the way in which we do research to engage with communities and hopefully change the life of communities, but also to ask difficult questions, global questions about poverty, inequality, about war, about peace, about fairness, and to work towards a more stable and safe globe or world. And that is, I think, what you also will experience if you come to the University of the Free State, or if you engage at some level with our students and our staff of the university.
Well, I have engaged, and I've engaged with you in the past. I've engaged with your students. I think that that's fair. I'm not supposed to endorse any universities or colleges, but I can say that your global perspectives were terrific during the pandemic. I think what you're doing is terrific work. Keep it up. Good luck.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you. If you would like additional information about the University of the Free State, please go to ufs.ac.za. If you would like to send a note to me at the show, please go ahead and do so by sending an email to highereducationtoday@topcolleges.com. And thank you for watching. We will continue to bring you quality discussions about important matters in today's college and university world. I'm Steven Roy Goodman, and you've been watching Higher Education Today.